Hey guys, welcome back to Forging Men in 10. I hope everyone's Thanksgiving went well, and I hope the holiday season is bringing more joy than stress. It's good to be back in the swing of things as I took a little hiatus and went on a vacation up to Pennsylvania to visit my family for 3 weeks. I really thought I could get behind a desktop to make a recording or two and release a few of my studies, but it just wasn't possible. I apologize. Anyways, recently someone showed me an extremely cool connection between a covenant with Abraham, God, and Jesus, and how that broken covenant left Jesus on the cross and God being faithful. It's just too good not to share and pass along. I'll also drop some nuggets in there along the way for some real life application. The reading will be a little bit longer than normal. We'll be reading 18 verses, starting with Genesis 15, 1 through 18. I will also reference Genesis 12, but I'm not going to be reading from it. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." First nugget: God is our protector and our overabundant provider. This alone will be a lesson one day, but don't forget who our God is. Verse 2: But Abraham said, "Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my child is Eleazar of Damascus?" The heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus. Second nugget: how easy is it to question the promises of God? One thing to keep in mind here is this isn't the first time God is coming to him and telling him this. God, in chapter 12, God already made this promise. He already promised him a new land and to be the father of many nations. How easy is it to overlook God's track record and stand firm when your world is burning around you? Verse 3: Then Abraham said, "Look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir." And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This one shall not be your heir, but the one who will come from your own body shall be your heir." Then he brought him outside and said, "Look now towards heaven and count the stars, if you're able to number them. And if you're able to number them." And the Lord said to him, "So shall be your descendants." And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. Then he said to him, "I am the Lord, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, to give you this land and inherit it." And he said, "Lord God, shall I know what I will inherit?" And he said to him, "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." Then he brought all 3 of these to him, and cut them in 2 down the middle, and placed each piece opposite of each other. But he did not cut the birds in 2. And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abraham drove them away. Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abraham, "Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will serve them, and they will afflict them for 400 years. And when the nation whom they serve, I will judge. Also, afterward, they shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. And it shall come to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. On the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham." Make sure you keep these 2 verses in mind, these last 2 verses in mind, as they are very important. Alright, so there's a lot to break down here. The first thing I'm going to start with is the call. The call happened in chapter 12. Abraham was called into a land where he will make be the father of many nations. God will protect him and bless him. So when God put Abraham to sleep, well, even before he put him to sleep, when he was having a dialogue with God back and forth, it wasn't the first time God had made this promise to him. And when he gave him, and in the vision, when he put him to sleep and he spoke to him, that was the covenant. God coming to him a second time was a reassurance, because he could see Abraham's faith was weakening. God called Abraham to leave his country, leave his family, and go to a land God will show him. One thing we need to keep in mind is when God calls us to new things, he usually calls us away from old things and into the new. The new is usually unknown and scary. I just want to say right now that Abraham's name was also meant the High Father. The people around him probably judged him, made fun of him, because he had no children. His name was the source of his pain, and God wanted to call him away from that. Not only did he want to call him away from that and into greater things, because he saw the greatness in Abraham, he also wanted to call him away from a lot of the other stuff that was dragging him down. His parents were into paganistic practices. So God called him away from that and into a new thing, a new place. God may call you out of your current place. Maybe you're surrounded by people that don't think very highly of you. They don't have good choice words for you. God has a plan for you, and God will call you to greatness. Don't be scared. You have to step into the new places God is calling you. This is a great life principle as well, because people want to try new things, but only if they're comfortable with it. The reality is you're never going to be comfortable with a new thing because you've never done it before. You have to just do that new thing, and then you will be comfortable. Maybe that new thing is opening a business or getting a new job in a totally new field. To move on to the passage we read, you'll need to fully understand what a blood covenant was back in that time. So let's start with the young goat, heifer, ram, turtle dove, and pigeon. Abraham was to kill these animals and to cut them into 2 pieces and place them in a line. Back in those days, when 2 people entered a blood covenant, they would kill the animals, place them in a line like God told them to. They would stand back to back, and they would walk around these animals. While they were walking around these animals, they would look at these animals. They would take in the brutality of these animals' death. And when they would come back, they would stand face to face. They would cut each other's palm so that it would bleed, and then they would shake hands. While shaking hands, they would say to each other, "What happened to that animal happened to me if I don't keep that covenant. And what happened to that animal happened to you if you don't keep that covenant." This is where it starts to get so cool. God wanted to enter a blood covenant with Abraham. But as we know, no man can stand and see God in his fullness on earth and live. So that's why God put him to sleep. God literally put him to sleep and had an entire conversation with him, to him, laid out this promise and this covenant to him while he was sleeping. But you know what else God also knew? God knows that Abraham won't be able to keep this covenant. He won't be able to he won't have enough faith. Just as sometimes we don't. How many times do we let down God? But he still holds his promises true. And if Abraham was to enter this covenant with God, and he doesn't hold up his end of the covenant, he would have to die a brutal death, because that was the agreement of the blood covenant. But God is so amazing, and that wasn't in his plans. At the end of chapter 15, God's presence was represented by the smoking furnace, just like the burning bush or the smoke of Mount Sinai when Moses went up for the 10 Commandments. God, knowing Abraham could not live up to his covenant, he had Jesus take his place. Jesus is the light of the world, so Jesus was the burning lamp. The smoking furnace and the burning lamp, God and Jesus passed around those animals, passed in between those animals, just as it says, and made that blood covenant on behalf of Abraham. Jesus took Abraham's place in that covenant. Now it's starting to all make sense. Abraham couldn't wait until God delivered on his covenant. He slept with Hagar and he broke his covenant. However, Jesus had already taken his place, so Abraham would not die that brutal death. Jesus had to die that brutal death for Abraham, because God is a God that cannot lie. He will not lie, and he will hold true to his promises. So now we got the picture that of why Jesus had to die on the cross. He couldn't just die a normal death. He had to die on that cross, not just for Abraham's lack of holding to his covenant, but for ours as well. How beautiful is this picture that God laid out in the beginning of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, well before it was ever prophesied by Isaiah and well before it ever came to pass. God is so amazing. Everything is ordained by him in the Bible. Everything in our lives is ordained by God. We can always count on him being there, even when it doesn't feel like it. Love you guys. I hope this is a reminder of how great our God is. Stay safe. Be blessed through the holiday season.